Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to coverage of the 8th round of the 2014 16th Street Racing League from picturesque Road America. It's a track that measures exactly 4 miles in length and some of the most famous corners in all of North American motorsports. Turn 5 will be a key factor of today's race, and of course, that fabled run through the carousel heading down towards Canada Corner. The important thing with Road America always means be careful with fuel on that final lap. You roll up the hill, you run out of fuel, you'll be rolling all the way back down it to set a very bad end to your race. Will Benson, along with Rachel Whiteford and Cam Walsh here on RaceSpotTV. Don't forget you can follow us at RaceSpotTV throughout the course of today's broadcast. And qualifying here is getting itself underway. There you can see qualifying times as they stand up on the left-hand side of your screen. Closed course qualifying. These drivers have got themselves 4 laps to get themselves as high up the starting grid as possible. We ride on board with Tim Holgate right now as he comes to complete his first lap of qualifying, and he comes into today's event as your championship leader. But last time out, Cam didn't have the exact race he would have wanted. A late race snafu meant that he didn't get the win at Richmond.
Yes, a improperly timed caution for Tim Holgate pushed him back into the field where he was not able to recover in time for the win. But he should be here this week at Road America, as he is one of the many drivers that are talented on both the road and the oval. So we'll see what Tim Holgate can do today.
Riding along board with Andreas Warner in the Club Diat cars. He works himself out of 2. That run now down in towards turn number 5. And Andreas is one of maybe 2 or 3 drivers who we expect to see on the front row of the grid, Rachel. Joshua Chin going to provisional pole position, qualifying time 1:41.537. Andreas Warner, Tim Holgate, and potentially also Mitchell de Jong looking to get themselves onto the front row here.
Yeah, absolutely. Andreas Werner is one of the road course specialists in this series, and he is incredibly fast. Times in practice have been pretty good for him, so definitely a safe pick for the pole tonight.
So there you can see him working himself through the carousels, right back along board as he comes now down that run to Canada Corner. It is a place where we'll expect to see a lot of passing. This time last year, of course, Randy Trenworth had himself a huge accident here involving Dave Jinks right about here on that run down into Canada as Dave Jinks got himself loose. Randy Chenoweth then ended up with his car impaled in one of the Armco barriers. Through Bill Mitchell Bend then for Andreas Warner down in towards the final corner on the racetrack. It's oh so difficult through here. Use a little bit of that curve on the way up underneath the Caterpillar Bridge. Andreas Warner will come. Will he be able to improve on his qualifying time in his second lap? 142.304 first time around, second time around 142.102. That is not good enough though for pole position for the time being. That is still being held by Joshua Chin, who has pulled his car back onto pit road, come back out. Fresh set of boots for him. We ride on board actually with him as he now comes down towards Canada Corner, Cam.
Yes, Joshua Chin is doing a very good job setting the pace early, but it's just going to be a matter of if he can continue this pace, as I expect these lap times to continue to drop. So only 2 more laps to go for the flying laps, and we'll see who will come away with the pole here. It's a lot closer than it was here at Circuit of the America and at Barber, so it's definitely going to be interesting.
So Chin works himself now down in towards that final corner in the number 93 Banshee Autosport car working himself up the hill. Will be to improve on a 141.537 as he comes past the start-finish line? The answer to that question is going to be no, he doesn't. So he remains in pole position, does not improve his time. However, Mitchell de Jong, there you can see him, is scored on the racetrack, working himself on another lap. To give you an update, Tim Holgate is back onto the racetrack as well, as we now ride along board, Rachel, with Mitchell de Jong in the number 5 car.
Yeah, some pretty impressive speed out of Mitchell de Jong tonight, and his qualifying times was a 141.431, currently doing a 141.844, so he's definitely got about 4 tenths we know he can find. Not sure this lap will be it though, Will.
No, at 141.600, he improves his time just 62 one-thousandths of a second further back now, and he's got himself another lap to go. Let's see if he still holds that speed on this lap, as actually no, he is slowing down, so that will be his run over. Let's check in then with Tim Holgate as he works himself past the start finish line. Still 3rd place for Holgate as he completes another lap. Now, interestingly enough, actually, for Tim Holgate, he's only doing 1 lap runs compared to the 2 lap runs that Chin and de Jong and Andreas Warner were doing there, Cam.
Yes, and I must have to wonder if he is absolutely trying to get as much fuel as he can out of the car beforehand, is trying to get that lap time down. But normally you'd want an out lap, a warm lap, and you have that second flying lap. So there's always a plan with Tim Holgate, so he's definitely going to be doing it for a reason.
You've got Hunter Smith there just pulling off the racetrack, and here you can see Dave Jinks in number 76 Broken Arrow cars. He works himself now down in towards this very difficult corner as you come out the hurry down. Now you come down in towards the carousel to ride along board with him. Currently sat in the 14th place. A couple of drivers yet to set a qualifying time. They include Matt Kingsbury, Chuck Eisenberg, Johnson, and also Vic Cordell. Coming down in towards then the King, Dave Jinks, and that Broken Arrow number 76 car, trying to improve on his current 14th place. Pretty big field spread though. You got yourself your top 5 drivers, Rachel, separated by 1 second. Then a half-second gap to Koritsky, scored in the 6th position. Then you've got another 5 drivers separated by half a second. But then you go down this mid-pack, you get a little bit of separation, a couple of attempts here, a couple of attempts there.
Absolutely, because you do find there are certain drivers who specialise, shall we say, in qualifying. They are blistering over a single lap. But on the flip side, there are drivers who are perhaps a little bit better on the long run, better on those tyres. We've got guys like Steve Richardson, we've got people like Randy Crosno. They are pretty good at looking after those tyres. So it's not about putting yourself first on the grid. That helps. But in this sort of racing, looking after those tyres and making sure they last you long enough can be more critical.
Dave Jinks improves his time and not his position. He remains in the 14th place right now. He's one of only a couple of drivers on the racetrack, and we will check in with the other one. That is Joe Branch, currently scored 13th place, working himself up the hill then. He comes towards the start-finish line. Will he be able to improve his time? Well, he's got a 1 minute 44.858 to beat. He improves that, and he goes up into... No, he stays into 12 now. Joe Branch moves up 1 position ahead of Steve Richardson there.
Yes, good lap overall, but ultimately you're just going to be finding out that there's always that road course difference. We find in ovals there may be half a second difference, or maybe even as much as a second difference, but here on a road course, your times are going to vary far larger. So it'll be good to see where Joshua Chin and Michael de Jong can do on the front row, though, that's for sure.
So then, ladies and gentlemen, qualifying is over. To run through your starting grid for this, the 8th round of the 2014 16 Street Racing League Championship, it is going to be on the front row, Joshua Chin for Banshee Autosport, with Mitchell de Jong representing Mad Cape Racing alongside him, just 62 one-thousandths of a second separating them on the front row of the grid. Tim Holgate in the 3rd position, Andreas Warner in 4th place there. Tim Holgate, of course, coming into this race with the championship favourite tag firmly in his place. Row number 3, Eric Davis and Brian Kozowski. Row number 4, Hunter Smith and Randy Crosno. Heading back into row number 5, it's going to be Rob Ungerlinks there for Team No Bueno, David Sockrider for P1 Sim Racing on the outside row. Austin Esparti there for the highest placed last lap motorsports driver, with Joe Branch of Snake Pick Racing on the outside of the 6th row of the grid. Steve Richardson and Broken Arrows, Dave Jinks share row number 7. Tim Miller, the independent, on the inside, row number 8. Terry Mattinson for Banshee Autosport on the outside. And then we have ourselves Vic Cordell for AeroX Racing in 17th position. Matt Kingsbury for the Last Lap Motorsports Brigade in the outside, row number 9. Now McBride is rounding out your field here today. As you can see there, remaining drivers as they get ready to get themselves onto the race grid. Plenty of onboards for you here today, as we are going to have ourselves one from Andreas Warner in the Club DH car. Also got one from Joshua Chin starting on the outside of that front row of the grid. Got on board today as well from Steve Richardson, starting himself down in the mid-pack in the number 35 car. We have also got ourselves an onboard from Rob Unglings in the Team No Bueno car. Finally, got ourselves an onboard with your championship leader, that is Tim Holgate. So now the drivers are going to do themselves one solitary pace lap before they get set to go racing. Important facts about this racetrack, Rachel. Road America is fast. It's also incredibly narrow. Passing opportunities. You've got one down into turn number 1, but you have to be very, very brave. You've also got passing opportunities, of course, naturally down into turn 5, into Canada corner, but you put a lot of pressure on drivers down into the hurry down section of the racetrack. And underneath that Corvette bridge, turn number 6 is a corner. You've got to be very, very careful, because you can be vulnerable to attack if you don't have a good run through turn 5.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's getting critical exits of Road America is so important, especially out of the carousel if you want to make a run down to the kink in Canada corner. Running into turn 5 though, here after turn 1, big important exit out of turn 2. Lots of speed out of there, get that toe, put it on the inside, and you can do it, but it's unfortunately very easy to defend that corner. So Canada corner is probably one of the best options, although the Corvette bridge is definitely a close second.
And Cam, again, this track, incredibly narrow. Pit stops here, it's going to be critical. Get them right, you're on a shot for a good victory. Get them wrong, well, you might be rolling back down that hill on that final lap. We have seen it here before, and we see it in so many forms of racing at Road America. You get that one little bit of fuel, too little in your car, and it very well could be game over.
Absolutely, and we have seen, since we do have fuel tank restrictions here, will probably have 2 pit stops, but we have seen in races both on oval and road, people have to be very conscious about their fuel usage, which obviously is intentional. So definitely be interesting to see who wants to actually take the risk to do the deed of trying to put as little fuel as possible in, or somebody might want to just load up on fuel and just take the positions they're welcome to. Will definitely be interesting to see how these Dallara DW12s tackle Road America, and we're about to get underway in just a few minutes' time.
Of course, Robin Miller, one of the voices, lifelong voices of IndyCar, Rachel, calls this the toughest challenge in all of North American motorsports road racing. He's not that far wrong. And it's a track that many, many fans have always wanted to see return back to the IndyCar schedule.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you. It's an incredibly tough circuit. It's not a short one either. The kink, one hell of a corner. Let's not forget how many people that's claimed. But it's because it's so left, right, 90-degree corners, lots of low corners, which in IndyCars are quite difficult. You've got lots of acceleration and deceleration. You've got lots of passing opportunities. It's a challenging course. It's also one of the more organic American circuits if you compare it to things like English tracks, Brands Hatch. It has elevation changes, it has big runs, it's got straights, it's got corners, it's got the carousel.
And it's not a car park.
Exactly, it's not a car park, there's very little runoff. You make a mistake here and it will cost you, especially the kink. There's nowhere to go.
This corner as well, especially on the opening laps, you've got to be incredibly careful. Very easy to lock up a rear brake and create a little bit of carnage, and these guys in the mid-pack are going to be oh so aware of that one. It's going to be Joshua Chin then, bringing the field to the green flag here at Road America to start the 6th round of the 2014 16th Street Racing League. Of course, we're getting closer and closer to the first of our Triple Crown event for the season. The 16th Street Indianapolis 500 is just over 1 month away. The pace car making its journey down towards pit road, and ladies and gentlemen, the 8th round, the 2014 championship will start right now. Great run then down in towards turn and 1 for Chin. You can see Holgate side by side, battle for position. This is P2 on the racetrack, and will Holgate be able to get the move done in towards turn number 1? The answer to that question is going to be yes, Cam.
Yes, Joshua Chin, a great start, as we've seen the leaders in 16th Street always have a good habit of getting the starts well. Tim Holgate, very aggressive right off the bat, getting the position from Michael De Jong, now up to second place right behind Joshua Chin, the number 93 car. So we'll be interested to see what Tim Holgate's going to do. If he's going to actually go on the inside in this corner here, you will not. Now it's going to be interesting to see if they're going to take the curbing here, because a lot of people want to ride. I don't think it's wise in the IndyCar, but they head up to you past the Corvette bridge, Will.
Yeah, as we're having a look then at Brian Kozlowski battling with Rob Underlings in the battle for P7 on the racetrack there. So good action in the early going as they work themselves through the hurry downs down in towards turn number 8 for the first time, and it looks as though this field is spread out, but you've got Mark Johnson battling with with Tim Miller side by side as they work themselves down into 8 and 9 for the first time. Millers goes off there in the number 91 car, so we have our first victim going off of the racetrack, and that is Tim Miller now dropping himself to 19th and the rear of the field.
Not so true, Will. Dave Jinks was off in turn 1 as well. Also managed to keep it fairly safe, get back on the track.
Yeah, as we're having a look then on board with Dave Jinks down into the 18th position from where he was in 14th at one point. Tim Miller is now down, scored in the 19th position. There you see him. Second to last is Joe Branch, has also had an issue. There you can see him. He's now scored in the 20th spot on the racetrack. So a couple of drivers falling back in the early going out front. However, you can see conclusion of lap number 1. It is going to be Joshua Chin leading the way. The gap between himself and Tim Holgate is about 2/3 of a second on the racetrack, Cam.
Yes, Tim Holgate and Joshua Chin looking to break away from Michael De Jong, but I do not believe that De Jong is going to let that happen. It seems that these 3 cars, as we saw in qualifying, are probably going to be the ones that are going to be pulling away. So it's a 3-horse show, but don't count Andreas Werner there in the back. May want to capitalize on any issues that might happen.
Car turn around. That is a number 777 car of Austin Espati there. We'll get ourselves a replay of that one in just one moment. He's having to let the entire field storm past him. I was about to say that there's a great little scrap going on for free ride racing. We will have a look then to figure out what happened to Austin Espati in the 777 car. Now this is coming through turns number 1 and 2 as the last lap motorsports car. Does he lose it all by himself, or does he get a little bit of help as he then comes down in towards turn number 2? This is where the issue is going to be, coming down into the corner, and I think he might have got helped around. No, I don't think so actually, Rachel. I don't see a car immediately behind him.
No, I believe he wasn't quite anticipating the braking of the car in front of him. And that, of course, is the... Damn it, I hate it when people have blue cars and blue numbers. That'd be David Stockrider. David Stockrider was a little bit early on the brake, a little bit heavier than he wanted. And I don't think Espati was quite expecting it, locked his own brakes and turned the car around.
But he falls down to the rear of the field in the number 777. Last lap motorsports car. Just actually Mitchell de Jong as well has really fallen down the field, so something has happened to him, Cam, down into the 20th spot for the time being.
Yes, we'll have to definitely look at that, but perhaps getting too aggressive too quick, trying to get those lap times down while the tires are still warming up, or maybe something more insidious happened. Hopefully his car right now looks like it's okay. It seems to be driving a-okay, so now Michael De Jong is going to have to work his way through the field.
Oh, and you see the 777 car going very wide on the final corner. That allows the number 5 car, Mitchell de Jong, to move himself back up one position on the racetrack. Ahead of them, though, you've got Rob Ungerling, so having a look from our aerial coverage here, powered by And1 Design, battling with Randy Crosno, and this is the battle for P8 on the racetrack, so now we ride along board, Rachel, with Ungerlings in that 7th spot on the racetrack, and in fact he's right behind Randy Crosno as they work themselves down in towards turn number 6.
Yeah, he is. Crosno managed to get past him at the start of his lap.
Oh, Crosno's off!
He's back, he's secured it. That was good control there from Randy Crosno.
Let's get a replay then to show you Randy Crosno, and this is down into turn number 6. It's a corner that people so often forget about. Let's have a look then on board with Crosno. This is down in towards turn number 5. Nicely to turn 5, and then you just come up the hill at this point in time, Rachel. You change asphalt as you come down into the corner, and he loses it before that point. Just under braking car gets loose for him.
And later later in the lap, though, unfortunately, Randy Krosno has had contact with Mark Johnson. A couple of turns later, Mark Johnson tapped the rear end of his car and sent Randy Krosno into the wall after going through the sand there. We'll have to find that.
But you can see from the replay, not too much damage then to Randy Krosno's car as we're having a look from the rear of it. But Rachel, Krosno's day, a little bit of damage actually. You can just see it from the very rear of his car. A little bit of damage in that number 10 Aero X Racing car. But a couple of incidents there for Randy Krosno in the early going is not what he would have wanted.
No, and I'm genuinely surprised there won't be a penalty for that impact, because that was complete outbraking himself straight into the back of Krosno's machine, and that was a snap spin for that guy. Really unfortunate. Yeah, not the lap that Randy Krosno will want to remember. He's been dirt tracking, and it's not the first one we've seen do that. People seem to be a bit snappy on the brakes here so far. Maybe a little too aggressive too early. But that's Krosno back in 14th place. Seems like the car isn't too badly damaged.
Meanwhile, Joshua Chin now has a 4.2 second advantage over Tim Holgate in the battle for the race lead. There you can see Joshua Chin, and there you can see Tim Holgate. When Holgate's got a little bit of company from Andreas Warner, the gap between these two drivers is only 8 tenths of a second as it stands right now. And last time by, just having a look through the timing and scoring, they were equal to 1/1000th of the second, Cam.
Yes, and Michael De Jong has retired. This is going to be new here. He qualified. Same thing as well as Austin Espedy has retired. So early retirement's happening here for one of our fastest cars and one of our middle pack cars.
And of course, you've got that ticker running along the top of the screen. Keep up to date with your favourite drivers. There you can see the battle for P2, P3 on the racetrack between Tim Holgate coming through Bill Mitchell Bend into that final corner and Andreas Warner. That time by, Warner is going to be a couple of attempts of a second faster. And Rachel, we need to remember, of course, that these drivers have that push to pass button. They'll have 10 uses of it throughout the course of this event. That will give themselves additional horsepower, makes getting past your rivals just that little bit easier. The big thing though is you've got to time when you use it. So rattle on board now with Warner.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's something you can deploy strategically. Of course, 40 lap race here, that's once every 4 laps. You deploy it coming out the final corner, you get that boost all the way down the main straight, which gaining you some horsepower up that hill will be a big advantage. However, you have traffic that comes up to you later on. You're going to need to save something in reserve should the need arise. So definitely a strategic tool these drivers will be deploying today.
Just checking in with a battle then between Noel McBride and Rob Ungerling's gap between those two drivers is about 9 tenths of a second on the racetrack as they come down in towards turn number 5 once again. There you can see Noel McBride, there you can see the battle he is trying to have with Rob Ungerlings ahead of him. This is for P9, P10 on the racetrack as Ungerlings in no Breno car, just trying to pull ahead of McBride but not doing a good job of it, Cam. Seems to be he's okay in sector 1, sector 2 is where he loses all of his time.
Yes, and of course that could come down to setup, and that also could come down to comfortability as they pass the off car of David Sockrider. It looks like the rear end just came out on his car. We'll continue with Rob Unglix as they come through this carousel here. It's very interesting as another car goes off in front of them. These guys are starting to pick up positions here. That's Mark Johnson as they yield way. Mark Johnson has to yield way as Mark Johnson actually comes back going into Canada Corner. Canada Corner is actually where Michael De Jong and Austin Espedy collided, but Mark Johnson overdoing the corner, and looks like Rob Unglix will get by. Unknown if Niall McBride will want to get past. I don't believe he won't be able to. So right now there's quick and fast action happening in 8th place and 9th and higher.
Yeah, and there you can see then Noel McBride will ride on board of him as he's going to try and make a move coming up the hill on Mark Johnson. Not quite close enough. Now these tyres will start to fall off in the next few laps or so. Potentially for Johnson, he's pushed it a little bit too hard, too early in the going, Rachel.
Yes, he possibly might have done. Of course, difficult of course to gain on a drive where you've got a car ahead that you're sucking up to, and there's a guy behind you trying to suck up to you as
Johnson
well.
spun around
He's
there
off.
in the number 56 car, so that is hard into the grass for him, and that's going to lose himself not 1 but 2, 3, 4 positions. In fact, Randy Crosnight's coming now with a huge head of steam. There you can see he just breezes past there. So Johnson now down into the 13th position. Replay of that one is coming up for you. And it does look as though he just looped it down in towards turn number 2. We'll have a look at the replay. This is down into that second corner. Almost a mirror image of what we saw a little bit earlier just on the exit of the corner compared to the corner entry, Cam.
Yeah, just getting on that power, the rear end sliding out on multiple cars here today at Road America. Very slippery track surface for these guys, it is. I'm seeing a lot of front end locking ups as well, so obviously these cars are trying to push themselves around as hard as they can. Mark Johnson now having a second incident, as it were, through for his campaign of the day.
Meanwhile, Josh Chin now has that advantage up to 6.3 seconds over Tim Holgate. However, Holgate is spilling away just a little bit from Andreas Warner. Warner in that dirty air now. Last time by, Holgate was a tenth of a second faster. So for Andreas Warner, now he's in that dirty air, Rachel. Just seems to be he's hit a proverbial brick wall. A literal brick wall as well, of course, as far as that dirty air from the rear of Tim Holgate's car will be going onto that of Andreas Warner.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to cause you to push a little bit understeer into the corners because you haven't got quite the grip you want, which means it's very difficult to actually get the exit right and catch the guy in front. One option he has is to go off cycle on the pit stops. If he can make his tyres run a little longer, pits early, get some track position, get some clean air most importantly, and will hopefully pass Holgate in that clean air. But right now, doesn't seem to be gaining much well.
Meanwhile, we've got another battle developing on the racetrack. This is between Matt Kingsbury running himself in the 10th position, Steve Richardson running himself currently in P number 11. Now, Richardson starting this race in the 13th, now running in the 11th spot on the racetrack, up a couple of positions due to attrition, Cam. However, he's trying to make himself a bit of ground. Matt Kingsbury in the number 21 car. Last time by, he was a couple of attempts of a second faster.
Yeah, so it will be interesting to see whether Richardson will be able to catch up and get past. It seems that right now, we've other than some early action, most cars are starting to separate themselves. I'm wondering if the dirty air isn't allowing people to get side by side, except for obviously going down the massive front stretch we have here. So as Stevie J. Richardson tries to catch up to Kingsbury, I'm not sure if Kingsbury is going to be able to catch up to Sock Rider, who's had that spin earlier.
Yeah, and this is the battle, as I say, for P9, P10, P11 on the racetrack. Getting close already to 1/4 distance in this race. The laps do tick off moderately quickly here at Road America, but Andreas Warner has caught back up to the rear of Tim Holgate. Now, there's a little bit of traffic there. There you can see Dave Jinks. He is struggling with his race car a little bit. Last time by for him, he did a 2-minute 15 lap. Very slow lap for Dave Jinks. He is really struggling on this set of tyres right now.
Yeah, well, he seems to have cooked him already. Remember, he's had a couple of slides, and when you...
We have just lost Rachel. As you see, Dave Jinks going off again down into turn number 5. So not the day he wanted at all. Now it's Eric Davis running himself in the 4th position, who's just going to breeze himself past. There you can see Davis running himself in the 4th spot. Already, however, with a 14-second deficit to Joshua Chin, who leads this race. In fact, around 15 seconds it's a deficit between P1 and P4. But as far as the Andreas Warner Tim Holgate battle goes on, as we ride on board, Rachel, with Andreas Warner, seems to be a bit of a tit-a-tat between these two guys right now.
Yeah, they seem pretty evenly balanced on the track. Well, it's going to come down to whose tyres last longer. We know Werner's pretty good with his. Holgate also pretty good. So, like I said earlier, it will be a fuel cycle issue. I think this pass will be made in the pit stop. I could be completely proved wrong and it will happen on the track shortly. But I don't think Werner there got quite the exit he wanted out of the final corner. Not going to make a pass into turn 1.
Having a look at the biggest gainers and losers in this race, and this is your biggest gainer, up a total of 11 positions, Cam. It's Nell McBride, who started this race well down the field in the 19th position, now running himself in 8th, and he had to avoid a very slow Dave Jinks there, down into the final corner.
Yes, and Niall McBride doing very good, make his way through the field, not having any issues. Dave Jinks, the exact opposite. I almost wonder at some point, yeah, he's obviously got to be dealing with some sort of suspension damage. I wonder at what point you might consider thinking about pulling that car into the pits. But Niall McBride, though, locking his sights on Rob Unglex. He was a little slower that lap by, but it should be interesting to see whether Niall McBride could zone in and catch Mr. Unglex there, and we'll see how these guys go.
Oh, we've got a spinning car there. That's the number 21 car of Matt Kingsbury now falling down the field. So another issue for the last lap motorsports car, who really haven't had much luck this season. An unforced error then for the number 21 car of Matt Kingsbury, again down in towards turn number 2. Let's ride along board with him as he comes down into the braking zone. I believe this is into corner entry for him. He locks it up. No, it'll be corner exit again to the second driver in about 5 laps, Rachel, to lose it on corner exit. Matt Kingsbury, another unforced error for him.
Yeah, this corner exit's a lot tighter than it seems, and when the guys are coming round, they're trying to put the power down, they've still got a minute amount of steering lock on, and you're finding that with a tiny bit of lock on the wheel, accelerating in his car will turn the rear end. And unfortunately, I've got 2 people so far, 3 or 4 if you count other corners, but that little bit of steering direction, the car hates it, and a little bit too lead-footed maybe, but round he goes. It's a classic DW12 problem.
As we now have a look at the battle between Steve Richardson and Mark Johnson, 2 Brits in the field battling for P11 on the racetrack. Having a look from the rear then of Steve Richardson to Mark Johnson. Cam, gap between these 2 drivers about 6 tenths per second. Now this is where that dirty air comes into play. You get the help up the hill down in towards turn number 1, and you can see that gap just coming down by a couple of thousandths of a second there between Richardson and Johnson. In fact, no, Johnson's not actually gaining anything at all. That gap only came down by 2, maybe 3 100ths of a second. Richardson holding his own right now, and that dirty air as Richardson also tries to close up to the rear of Crosno means we've now got ourselves a 3-horse race for that last battle inside the top 10.
Yes, and Mark Johnson, I believe, has a little bit of front-end damage from his collision with Randy Krasno as they passed by the stranded car of Dave Jinks. Once again, off track, unfortunately for him. But these 3 cars right now are fighting for that final top 10 position. Randy Krasno and Mark Johnson having met each other on the field once before already. We'll see if they get back up together as Mark Johnson absolutely overbrakes himself, much like he had with Randy Krasno, almost taking out the rear end of Steve J. Richardson. Obviously, his car is not able to brake as hard and as fast as the other cars.
He's got around. Steve Richardson has got around there. So there you can see, in recovering Steve Richardson, the pressure put onto Richardson in that number 35 car has bitten him, Rachel, as he loses it on the exit of the Hurry Downs.
Yeah, again, tight corner exit. This is what Road America has a lot of. Very slow 90-degree corners. As I said before with turn 2, power down on exit, just a little too much, and the car decided to pull its rear end around. Good recovery from him though. He could have ploughed into the inside wall. He didn't. He's got it going again, and unfortunately lost quite a few spots.
He does. He falls down into 14th position on the racetrack. We'll get ourselves one more look at that then from on board of Richardson as he works himself just before the carousel, before they come underneath the speed-filled sausage bridge. And you can see actually in turn 6 on our onboard replay, you actually pushed a little bit wide in turn 6. That upset his entire momentum through the hurry down. And I think, Cam, what it really was is he's just got himself into his head. He's made one small mistake, tries to push the next couple of corners, those tyres just sliding around, getting themselves overheated, and then he loses that car, costing himself a number of positions on the racetrack.
Yes, and you almost have to wonder, okay, after you've done that, you might want to come into the pits, as pit lane is becoming a busy place. Will we have Niall McBride in for pits, Randy Krasno for into the pits, Joe Branch, Matt A. Kingsbury, and I believe 1 or 2 other cars right now getting
on
some
pit road. Kingsbury, as you say, is on pit road. There you can see confirmation for him. So about 5 cars coming onto pit road that time by, but we expect the rest of these guys on pit road in the next lap or 2.
Yes, and they'll be obviously loading up and fuel and tires. IndyCar's not able to do double stint any tires as, yep, Joshua Chin is now coming down up the long hill, followed by Andreas Werner and Dave Jinks, who's now removed his front wing. So they're going to have to replace that. Maybe they can do some repairs to that car to allow him to continue as that very long 45-mile-an-hour come down to the thing as Joshua Chin slides the car into the pit stalls. as he will get new tires, get new fuel, and he'll be on the way shortly.
9.6 second stop by him, but the AeroX car just gets out ahead of him. That is Chuck Eisenberg there. He does himself also a 9.6 second stop, and you can see just moving out of the way then for Joshua Chin to allow him by down in towards turn number 1. Eric Davis is also scored on pit road right now in the Banshee Autosport number 65 car, out and away in 8.1 seconds, Rachel.
Yeah, that's a great stop there from him. Obviously, taking 4 tires and fuel, this limited fuel tank, it means they have to stop more often. And of course, that means they're stopping before the tires are going off, Will. So, if someone looks after them, you're going to see pretty good lap times running from start of stint to end of stint, rather than a pronounced drop-off. If this is a full tank, you'd see potentially about 20 laps.
Mark
and
Johnson,
by laps 18 to 19, you'd really start to see him dropping.
Mark Johnson almost collided with Steve Richardson on pit road. We'll hopefully get ourselves a replay of that one. He came out just as Richardson came in. So we'll get ourselves another look of that pit stop then for Mark Johnson. See just how close it was.
Unsafe release.
And it was very close. Yeah, we were getting potentially an unsafe release for him. So an out and away. You can see then he just had that 35 car, and that actually cost him quite a bit of time as well. So he back out and away onto the racetrack. However, keeping an eye out though on your race leader. He has made his first pit stop of the day as he works himself now down into the final corner. So he works himself back towards the start finish line once again to put 12 laps in the book here on RaceSpotTV. Everyone has made themselves one pit stop so far. Here is your top 10 as it stands. Going to take a moment, step aside, we'll be right back. You are watching RaceSpotTV.
Simulated racing can be awesome, but it can also be kind of a free-for-all. Interestingly, auto racing faced the same problem in its earlier days. Whether it was on the back roads, the beaches, or the city streets, the racing was fun. But there was always a certain level of chaos and danger, until some folks came along and put some order to all of this. Stuff like
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we apologise for that. Welcome back then. No commercials by the looks of it, so more racing for you guys. As they can see, the gap now between Joshua Chin and Tim Holgate is 11 seconds on the racetrack. Now, for those of you who are long-term viewers of the 16th Street Racing League, you will remember that last year, Joshua Chin and Tim Holgate were embroiled in this championship battle. Joshua Chin was the better guy on the road courses, a bit like Will Power actually and Dario Franchitti. Joshua Chin just had a little bit of the advantage on the road courses. Holgate, oh no, hold! As I say that, Josh Chin spins out down at the final corner. That was a very close lucky there. He didn't get himself into the tyre barriers. He recovers, but Holgate will be closing up on him. Replay of that one coming up immediately. Josh Chin losing it down at that final corner, Rachel.
Yeah, that's a shocker there from someone who's not put a foot wrong so far in this race. Looking at him there, he's done something I myself have done. He comes out too wide for the entry of the corner, puts his wheels on that grass, and he doesn't want to get the power down to steer back onto the track because that car will snap around. He tries to ride it out and tries to encourage it back on the track, but the back wheel steps out and he goes round. Amazingly good recovery there from Chin. Thankfully, he gets it back on the track and retains his lead, but the lead has gone from 14 seconds down to 5.
And also, potentially, Cam, he's going to have himself some very worn tyres all of a sudden in that number 93 car. And that is the first time I think we've seen Josh Chin put a foot wrong on a road course in a very long time. I was just about to say that, of course, Tim Holgate was the better driver on the ovals last season. Josh Chin was the person who was better on the road courses. Chin made, I think, one mistake all season long on a road course. I think it actually might have been here. Holgate, of course, he made his mistake at Richmond. If Josh Chin wants a chance of winning the championship, he needs to win here and try and get that momentum away from Holgate. Of course, with his bad finish at Richmond last week, Holgate running in second position. Now, all of a sudden, I think Holgate can smell some blood.
Yes, once you get that fire in your belly, you start losing a tenth of a second or so off of every corner as they go through the kink there, coming down towards Canada Corner. Should be interesting to see. Oh, as Joshua Chin has his second mistake.
Wow. So, yeah, Joshua Chin, actually, this might be the same thing because he's actually going okay at the moment. So, Joshua Chin is still leading the way here as he comes down into turn number 1 once again. As you can see him there, just moving himself down in towards that second corner on the racetrack, right on board of him, and that run down into turn number 5. But there's confirmation though, his last lap was a 1:45, so he does have 2 incidents there in as many laps, costing himself now. That gap is just 3 seconds on the racetrack, Rachel.
Yeah, that's really close, that gap there, and Holgate can probably smell blood in the water. I mean, Chin is having some issues with his tyres. They are not particularly happy, so Holgate should really have a good chance. If you can catch up with him, I think you could pass him fairly easily.
As there you can see, just coming into the background is Tim Holgate, riding along board of him now. The gap to the race lead is down to just 3.3 seconds on the racetrack as it stands right now. And Holgate, as he works himself underneath the Speedfield Bridge, coming through the carousel, does look as though that his lap times are improving. Joshua Chin, a couple of sloppy mistakes in the last couple of laps, Cam.
Yes, as he does going through the kink this time, heading into Canada Corner soon. It's interesting to see how he's going to make mistakes. So hopefully Joshua Chin's going to be able to just say, okay, we messed up a couple of corners. We do have the race pace, so I should be able to pull away from Tim Holgate if I just go back to doing laps. And sometimes that is a very tall order.
Tim Miller battling with Mark Johnson in the battle for P11 on the racetrack. As we have a look from the rear then of Johnson in this battle for P11. Now, of course, Miller had an incident at the start of the race, Rachel. He fell down the field. He has recovered, and he is lapping at the moment same times as Johnson. In fact, Johnson's got the faster lap of the two in the race so far, but Miller is just putting a little bit of pressure on. This is for P11 and P12. Johnson, of course, recovering from his own spin a little bit earlier on.
Yeah, exactly, and recovering from mistakes is very hard. It's more of a mental challenge than it is a physical one. Sometimes you just don't want to push in that same corner as quite as hard again, because you remember what happened last time, and you'll feel like you're feeling something from the car. You won't be, but you'll tell yourself it's feeling different, and I think that's happening to Kingsbury for sure. Not Kingsbury, sorry, Joshua Chin, because he's babying those exits now, Will.
He is, and it's that thing at the same time though. The second that you have that first incident, Cam, you change your braking points almost subconsciously, and unless you can completely get yourself out of rhythm, as we ride on board actually with Hunter Smith, and this is about for P8 on the racetrack right now as they work themselves through turn number 2. Unless you can snap yourself out of that as the car just pushing very wide ahead of them, then the second you get your braking zone different, that's what sets you up for another mistakes, because you're not carrying the same speed for the corner, you're not getting to the accelerator at the same time, you're not braking at the same point. More opportunity for things to go wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, you start getting into a corner, you start entering it slower, you're going to turn that wheel at the same time you think you normally do, and you're going to find yourself missing a lot of apexes. I don't believe that's what Joshua Chin is doing now, as he is starting to push that gap back. He's swallowing his mistakes, and he's now trying to push his car back up into a good, tenable lead, but was really worrying there for a little bit how he was going to handle these mistakes, and Tim Holgate, obviously, wanting to take advantage of as much of this as possible. Tim wanting to close that gap to try and put Josh under actual pressure instead of just implied pressure through the times.
P7, P8, P9 separated by a total of 1.5 seconds as David Stockrider on the button then in that P1 racing car, and McBride pushing himself a little bit wide there through the exit of Canada Corner as they run now down into Bill Mitchell Bend. You can see that gap on your screen, both with the time difference and the visual difference. Stockrider, oh, McBride goes off. That's going to be 1 position lost by him, 2 positions lost by him there. Stockrider will go past. Now McBride losing 2 positions in 1 corner, Rachel.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate downside of being in a close battle. You put your foot wrong, several cars are going to go past. Although we have seen so far today really respectful driving from guys, not re-entering the track as soon as they might want to, and avoiding contact returning, so that's a big thing.
Yeah, as we can see there, another look. Now McBride just pushing wide in the corner. So easy to do here at Road America, and he losing himself 2 positions because of that. And Cam, very lucky that he didn't get himself into a spin there, because he would have been Joshua Chin-like, costing himself a lot more time. But he is still going. So you're just having a look at him now, coming down in towards turn number 1. And the replay there, and now we go back to our live coverage, and he's now down in towards turn 6, about a second back now from Hunter Smith, who runs himself in the 7th position. But the battle, by the way, still continues with now Sock Rider closing up to the rear of Randy Crosno, so right on board with Sock Rider.
Yes, and David Sockrider just had an issue entering the turn after that second long straight. He kind of swung the rear end around. He recovered without any incident. Now McBride and Randy Krasno getting around. So David Sockrider once again will have to recover as he is right behind Randy Krasno now heading into Canada Corner. Will he make it too wide going into Canada Corner? I believe he will. Yes, he makes his intentions early, which is a very smart thing to do. Will he overcook the corner? He will not, and Randy Krasno will yield that position. So David Sockrider, while he originally started the lap on 7th, will end up with at least 9th.
Coming down into the final corner then, David Sockrider trying to make up a bit of ground as we've got Mark Johnson scored on pit road. There you can see him running him now south now in the 15th position. Going to be dropping back just a little bit there as he's making a pit stop again. And this is a very long pit stop actually for him. A very long pit stop, as we've also got Chuck Eisenbach scored on pit road. Again, getting some repairs done to his race car. So attrition taking its toll here in the early going. Chuck Eisenbach's now been on pit road, Rachel, for just over 12 minutes.
He has indeed, and we have another car really, really slow on the track. That is the 76 car of Dave Jinks. He is limping around well.
Yeah, and of course he's been in the wars a little bit here today, cruising along. We ride on board with him as he comes down, and there you can see only 100. He's really lifting off the throttle there in that Banshee Autosports car, coming down into turn 5, lifting, braking, and then coasting through the corner. Some very big issues now to Dave Jinks in that number 76 car, Rachel.
Yeah, he's not even had a lap below 1 minute 47 during the entire race. He's got serious side pod damage on the left hand side, probably from that earlier contact, but really bad day for him. I think he's just running now to make up some places. We have had retirements, of course, from I believe Mark Johnson, Chuck Eisenbach, and Matt Kingsbury, Austin Esperite, Michael De Jong. So that's places that can be made up, and points mean prizes. Dave Jinks looking 4 down.
Oh no, Chin into the wall. Turn number 5, Josh Chin is going to be out of the race.
Destroyed car, Will.
Wow, and we'll get ourselves a replay of that one. This is down in towards turn number 5. Now, mistakes breed mistakes. Josh Chin trying to push that gap back up as he comes down in towards turn number 5. This is the replay up on your screen for Joshua Chin as he says goodbye to his race. He comes down in towards turn number 5, gets himself on that exit curb, car spins around into the tyre barrier. Game over for Joshua Chin. One more replay from our aerial coverage powered by And1 Design as he comes down in towards turn number 5, hovering just behind the trees there, coming down in towards the corner. You can see now taking that entry, and as he gets to the exit of the corner, this is what happens to him. Spins it around, loops it, smashes it into the tyre barrier. Joshua Chin is out of the race. Tim Holgate is your new race leader, Cam.
Yes, Tim Holgate coming away with that first position. Joshua Chin having ripped that entire front end off of that car. I don't see any wheel damage. I'm surprised he towed it, but obviously that car is going to be very sickly having a heavy impact like that. Tim Holgate, though, now picking up P1. Andreas Werner 2.9 seconds behind, picking up P2.
So then, this is now your new race leader, Rachel. A huge, incredible change in tonight's event.
It is indeed, but Chin might still be able to get back on track. He obviously won't be on the same lead lap as these guys, but if he gets his tow completed and starts his repairs, I think he can get a nose cone change and carry on, because that car hit very square. This is exactly what we said before, though. This was that corner exit. He's had a few moments he's been timid, and he was too timid, and it just looped on him because he was being too slow. Terrible to see, because he was a driver we definitely thought could win this one, Will.
Yeah.
He had this in his hand, and this is the problem. You start to psych yourself out. And I think that's exactly what's happened to Josh Chin tonight. He just psyched himself out of the corner. Tragic, really, but Tim Holgate, hey, you got to finish it to win it. And Holgate is still running, so...
We are going to actually get a word from Joshua Chin. Chin, take us through what happened. Is that car repairable, do you think?
No, I don't think so. Even if it was, I'm probably not going to try and get back out there. It's just a part-time schedule and first race I've been able to make in a couple months. But, yeah, I got on the power a little too early. I didn't have the car fully on the curb, so one tire was on the asphalt, one was on the curb, and it didn't exactly enjoy that and just spun off to the left.
Question, Joshua, this car has quite a lively rear end, especially on power application. You've had a few moments throughout this race where you've been coming through some of the slower corners, trying to get the power down, it's wobbled, once you were off, twice you've spun, and one very, very, should we say, zigzaggy moment out of the final corner. Do you think you maybe psyched yourself out a little bit going into turn 5 and didn't quite put enough power down?
No, I definitely had too much power. It's a very finite line between using too much curb and not enough. And in that case, I wasn't enough when I hit the power, and you can't be on two surfaces without getting wheel spin when you mat it, which is what happened. And the spin I had was actually me just missing the entry and where I was aiming for, not getting it turned back. That had nothing to do with the lively rear end, as you said.
Oh, big news! Sorry.
Yeah, I've got to say, we've got the replay. The replay of that is up on your screen, actually, so we've just shown you that one. We're going to get one more look at it from our aerial coverage as they work behind the trees, down in towards turn number 5, down into turn number 5 again. He just loses that car, backs it in, gets it back around, exactly the same thing as Josh Chin had, but he does get himself back out and away. Final question, by the way, Chin, before we let you go, is, well, you had that incident down in the final corner, very similar incident. Was there any kind of like tire degradation issues that came out of that one?
No, I don't think so. I might have had the rear tires a little lit up the lap after that, but I think that was totally unrelated. The tires felt pretty okay otherwise.
And we've got a secondary incident actually for Hunter Smith. So he is actually now classified as out of the race. He lost it down at the kink, and there you can see him upside down there. And that is the worst place to ever have an accident, Rachel.
Yeah, the runoff, the kink, there isn't any. You've got basically tree-lined forest either side, concrete walls, and shame. And I think Hunter Smith chose the shame option because that car is showing its ass to the world. He doesn't want to be seen by anybody.
By the way, second pit stop taking place for Tim Holgate. So Andreas Warner is currently classified as your race leader. Yes, Chin?
Looking at that Hunter Smith crash, I'm pretty sure he got a little bit of the inside curb going through the kink. And you can't do that because it'll just bounce the rear end around. Yeah, that is what happened to him.
He also had that front wing damage there, so obviously it not able to take the corner like he was planning, as this was the first time he was taking the corner with that front, as Dave Jinks has now been black flagged probably for just being on the track too slowly.
Yep.
No, to just go back to what Chin said though. No, sorry, Cam said it actually. Yeah, with aero damage on his car, you cannot enter the next high-speed corner as normal because you just don't know what it's going to do. The slightest bit of damage on this thing can make it react completely differently.
As Andreas Warner, we expect him on towards pit road this time by confirmation. Then Dave Jinks, there you can see him actually just ahead of Andreas Warner. He's got himself a black flag. He has to serve that one within 3 laps. Otherwise, he will be disqualified from this event. So Dave Jinks will bring his car onto pit road. The thing is, Andreas Warner could well be coming onto pit road this time by as well. This is going to be horrible for Andreas Warner as he comes onto pit road. And there we can see confirmation. He had to slow right down there. That's going to cost him an absolute boatload of time, Cam.
Yes, that has got to be worst case scenario, and really unfortunate. He was black flagged to come into the pits for being too slow, and then in coming in, he manages to get into the way of the leading car. That's very unfortunate, but he obviously has to do what the flags tell him to do, though. Andreas Warner will not be happy about that. At that time, he had an 8-second lead over Team Holgate, so we will see where that leads him.
So then,
isn't it ironic?
It is, don't you think? As though we could see that the pit stop for Andreas Warner, 9.1 seconds out and away. Tim Holgate is back into the race lead as Andreas Warner rejoins the racetrack. 23 laps of this race scored complete. These drivers are each going to have to start one more time in this event. And Josh, very quickly whilst we have you, fuel mileage here, it's going to be kind of close actually when I'm thinking about it. They're stopping about every 12 laps. So the next time they're going to stop is going to be around lap number 36. It'll be a splash and go. Do you think these drivers are going to risk taking tyres?
I know I was originally planning on taking tires, and I was thinking you might as well, because there's no real loss of time. You might lose maybe a second or two, but there's no one really in a close enough battle where that's going to end up affecting them, and I think you'd rather just have the insurance of having tires and having nothing weird happen out of the pits.
By the way, David Sockrider onto pit road, 8.4 second stop for him. We saw it was an 8.9 second stop there for Rob Underlings. So David Sockrider comes back out onto the racetrack. He actually comes onto the racetrack a little bit wide there in that P1 racing car. That might be close for him, getting a penalty there, Cam.
Yeah, we'll have to see what they look at for the review there, but definitely something to keep an eye on as these track marshals have been keeping a very close eye on most cars here on today.
Steve Richardson out and away from his pit stop, a 9.5 second stop for him as he comes back out onto the racetrack. Now, there's not really a fully defined white line here, Josh, but you have got to keep down to the inside as you come down in towards turn number 1. Hold that inside line until we get into that first curb.
It's a really, really awkward pit exit, and there's no way of getting around it, especially if you come out near anyone. You just kind of have to pin it to the inside and hope that they can make the corner, get around you, and then you can get back around them. But yeah, it's a really, really weird pit exit.
Battle for P10 right now is between Tim Miller and Joe Branch, Rachel. At 1.3 seconds on the racetrack, you got another point as well.
Yeah, 1.3 seconds, not much in this circuit. It's actually quite close. But as you mentioned earlier, that dirty air really makes catching up to the back of somebody quite difficult here. You can get within rough range, but people are going to start deploying that push to pass, and you're making use of that on the main straight. Other point I had was just one for Joshua Chin, was we've seen a lot of people having issues on corner exit today. Do you think maybe the weather's a slight factor in this one? Do you think, I mean, the car's obviously got quite a lively rear end at the best of times, and putting that power down too soon is often a killer, but we're seeing a lot of people doing this and some experienced heads.
Well, I think the biggest issue with this car is it's a really, really stable car unless you throw something abnormal into it. So, like, if you hit bumps, if you're going across different surfaces, the car doesn't like that very much. And especially when you're getting back on power, Tim Holgate just had that going through the corner before the carousel, where he gets that bounce, and you can't hit the power at all because the rear wheels are going to spin at different rates and you're going to spin out. And it's really tough. I don't think the weather plays as much of a factor, because if we had a track with just pavement, it was smooth as could be, you wouldn't see that wheel spin very much.
What, you mean like Circuit of the Americas?
Exactly. But
yeah,
even then you'll hit bumps.
Yeah. By the way, the gap to the race lead from Andreas Warner, who we're right on board with, to Tim Holgate is currently 5.5 seconds. So Andreas Warner, last time by, a 1 minute 43.3 for him. He is actually catching your race leader. Last time by, he did a 1 minute 43.3. Your race leader did a 1 minute 43.9, Cam. Andreas Warner, despite that pit snafu, is closing down. This could be a very interesting last 15 laps if it carries on like this.
Yes, and we can definitely hope that Andreas Warner will be catching up to get behind Tim Holgate. Tim Holgate, I'm sure at some point is going to have to encounter some sort of lap traffic. But yeah, Andreas Warner, though, there's always the possibility, the outside shot, the thought going through his head right now isn't, I got to catch him, is it would be instead, I could have caught him if I didn't have that pit mistake.
And actually, Tim Holgate has come up to some traffic. That is Dave Jinks. You see, he just breezes past him there on the inside line as he works himself through the carousel. The issue with traffic is, though, is that we are now down really to 13 cars circulating, 14 cars circulating on the racetrack, because we've got ourselves a number of retirees from today's event. Michelle de Jong, Austin SPT, Matt Kingsbury, Chuck Eisenberg, Mark Johnson, all currently classified as out of the race. Just having a look as well, I believe that Niall McBride is out of the event as well. So Niall McBride is going to be classified as out of today's event. That means that we have essentially just got 13 cars circulating on the racetrack, Rachel, but this is a great battle, I think, shaping up now in your battle for the race lead. We'll get the confirmation times as they come past the start-finish line. But Tim Holgate, he comes past the stripe. It's going to be a 1 minute 43.997 for him. Andreas Warner, as he comes past the stripe, a 1 minute 43.138. He took an absolute boatload of time out of him that time by 8/10 of a second as he works himself back down in towards corner number 1.
Yeah, he's really got the bit between his teeth now. I think that pit stop snafu and being stuck behind Jinx on the entry has really fired up Andreas Werner. He's annoyed with himself. He's annoyed with Jinx, and he knows he lost some time. He's really giving it the hammer now to try and catch up, and I think this might be the spur he needs to get past him.
And this could be a grandstand finish here in this, the 8th round of the 2014 16th Street Racing League. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, here on RaceSpotTV, Monday nights are Skippy nights as we bring you coverage of the club UK and Ireland Skip Barber Racing School Championship. The next rounds taking place tomorrow. Start time 8:40 PM GMT, live, exclusive, here only on RaceSpotTV.
How do you not get copyrighted for that?
I have no idea. Randy Crosno and David Sockrider battling for position. As there you can see, the gap behind them is about 8/10 of a second between Randy Crosno and David Sockrider as they come down. And Crosno pushing a little bit wide there out of corner number 1. That allows Sockrider to close up a couple of tenths of a second, Cam.
Yes, Randy Krasno is doing a very good job at trying to keep David Sockrider behind him, but Sockrider, I believe, will have the ultimate pace, though. Actually, David Sockrider last lap, a 1:52.0, wondering if he had a mistake last lap, as David Sockrider closes right up, entering the corner here. Randy Krasno not flinching at all, getting under his way and doing his lap. David Sockrider, though, obviously having the better car on the brakes right now.
Yeah, and of course, Sockrider had an incident earlier on which put him a little bit further down the field. We did see Sockrider get past Krosno. It was actually down at Canada Corner. I wouldn't be surprised to see exactly the same thing happen. That P1 racing car of Sockrider does seem to have good speed. We ride back along board with him then as they work themselves out the carousel. The gap is about 3/10 of a second as they come down now in towards the King. Gap down to just about a 1/4 of a second. Sockrider with a lot of speed for this section of the racetrack. This could be that opportunity to once again look down to the inside. You see that Krosno just taking a defensive line. Sockrider has to get out of it that time, Bri. That wasn't necessarily a block, Rachel. That was defensive driving coming up the corner, but it was close, and I'm sure the race stewards might take a little bit of a look at that.
Well, I think they might, but it's a tough one to call. Krosno, of course, is the car in the lead at this point, so he has the right to choose his line. And if he wants to choose a defensive line out of the corner, he can. Of course, he has to make that move before the car is near him enough to make, to come alongside. There was no car alongside. He's allowed to choose his line out of that corner. So I think there shouldn't really be a problem with that.
Tim Miller, by the way, is scored on pit road with a bent rear wing. He's classified down in the 11th position right now. So add another driver to the list of potential retirees as this racetrack is taking its toll. And David Sockrider has fallen down to 1.3 seconds now behind Randy Krosno in this, the battle for P6 on the racetrack. Meanwhile, to have a look at your battle for the race lead, Tim Holgate has responded that last time by, he did himself a 1 minute 43.585. Andreas Warner, a 1 minute 43.6. Potentially, all of a sudden, Cam, Andreas Warner has overcooked his tyres.
Well, pushing is always a risk versus reward thing. Maybe he is using his push to pass. Maybe he's getting into the corners a little too deep. Maybe he's just using putting a little too much front heat in those tires from the brakes. But one lap, Tim Holgate seems to be holding off Andreas Werner right now. But we still have at least 10 laps to go, 12 laps to go.
13 laps to go, 12 laps to go. As very quickly, David Sockrider right back on the rear of Randy Krosno. Would he try and make the move down into Canada Corner this time by? The answer to that question is no. Over to you, Rachel.
Yeah, sorry, just on to Tim Miller. Turn 5, exactly where Josh Chin lost it. He does lose it a bit earlier though. The car rotates more and impacts more along the side, and that causes serious damage for him there in that corner. He then gets off the far right hand side of the track, loops again, and will run straight into the side retaining wall. That's not exactly what he wanted trying back on that track. He's just had a nightmare of a recovery from that.
Riding back along board with David Sockrider then in the P1 racing car down in towards turn 1. A little bit too far back to make that pass down into turn 5, I think. But it should only be a matter of time now, because Sockrider does look faster when it's 1-on-1 lap times. But Randy Crosney has been playing a very good defensive drive these last couple of laps to try and hold David Sockrider off. And the question you've got to ask is Sockrider being a little bit too aggressive, and does he need to try and find another way to get past? Because there are really 3 different passing opportunities on this racetrack, Chin. As again, Sockrider now right up behind Randy Crosney, less than half a second separating those 2 drivers.
Yeah, I think he's got to look at setting it up a little bit better, because honestly to me, Canada Corner isn't one of the better passing corners, because you've got the lead up with the kink. And it's easy to defend through that area, more so than people think, because you can take the more outside line and defend it fairly well, because it's a really, really tight corner entry and a shallow exit. Whereas, say, turn 1, even turn 3, turn 5, it's a lot more of a squared off corner, and it's a lot easier to make that pass from the inside. Here he goes.
Yeah, he's now looking down to the inside, and this time he will get the pass complete down into Canada Corner. You can see the brake disc glowing there for Crosno, but David Sockrider moves himself up now into 6th place on the racetrack. It took him a couple of laps, Rachel, but he's finally got the job done.
He has indeed, but has he worn those tyres a bit much, going after that spot so aggressively? We'll have to see what Crosno can do to come back from this.
And we do know that all of these drivers will have to wait 1 more stop, as we're now down to 11 laps in this race to go. Here is your race leader, and the gap between himself and Andreas Warner is 4.4 seconds on the racetrack, with now just 11 laps and 2 corners to go in this event, Cam.
Yes, these guys are going lap for lap. Andreas Warner, though, was able to take 7/10 off of that lead last time by. So we'll be able to see if this time by, as they come up the very long straight, Tim Holgate crossing the line of the 143.187. Andreas Werner responding with a 143.3. So they seem to have equalized once again. It will be, I think this is just going to be a matter of patience and seeing if Tim Holgate could potentially make a mistake in this later stages of this race.
And something to think about is that Andreas lost 3 seconds on his in lap, and I don't know if that was just with the Jinx incident or if that was just in general, but that 3 seconds, if he didn't lose that, he'd be like a second and a half back right now and in the draft.
There you can see the stats then for Andreas Warner, up 2 places from where he started, running now in the 2nd position. His fastest lap is a 1 minute 43.0. His last lap a 1 minute 43.3. Compare that to the 1 minute 43.1 last time by for Holgate. It seems to be that every time Andreas Warner closes that gap down to under 4 seconds, Holgate just responds, Rachel.
He does, and I can definitely think that Holgate is driving out of his relative. He knows exactly where Andreas Werner is. And when he sees that gap closing, I think he literally puts his hammer down the next lap round and just pushes again. And it's a dangerous cycle to get into, racing in your relative and racing against the clock, if you will. Is that you can make a mistake because you're trying so hard to push that gap and make a distance. You're racing to number. It's almost better for you just to turn the damn thing off and just tell your race engineer to shut up, don't keep telling me the gap, and just push the corners, corner after corner.
Yes, I know what I'm doing. As we ride back along board then with Andreas Warner, this time by 10 laps to go in this, the 8th round of the 2014 16th Street Racing League here on RaceSpotTV. Now the interesting thing is that these drivers, they're into that pit window now to make their final start. Yes, it's in some ways faster to wait until the end of a run, but at the same time, if you want to get yourself a little bit of clean air, you might want to do it at any other point. As you can see, Randy Crosno actually taking the early option. 8-second stop for him. Out and away. That's his final pit stop done there, Cam.
Yes, and so we'll see Randy Krasno getting away from David Sockrider. Will he be able to continue down his way, get these tires warmed up and in use, and perhaps maybe start pulling out a gap, or at least keep the relative up between when him and David Sockrider comes into the pits.
And there you can see then your race leader, Tim Holgate, as he works himself now down through the hurry down, underneath the Speedfield Bridge, and to the carousel. No, he's actually coming down into the hurry downs now, so I take that one back. But Tim Holgate has led today a total of 10 laps in this motor race. Joshua Chin has led 18 laps. Andreas Warner has led a total of 2 laps. So 3 different leaders in today's event, one of the most we've ever seen here at Road America. Actually, we're now riding on board with Holgate through the kink down in towards Canada Corner. And this is the point that you alluded to earlier, Josh. Just how, when you're down in that kink, you don't touch the curb, but you run as close to it as you can dare yourself to for maximum speed.
Yeah, it's weird because as much as you would think, oh, you can just use that curb, it's not a usable curb at all. It sticks up from the ground about an inch or two, so it's a pretty steeply banked, and it'll bounce the car around. And in a high-speed corner like that, when even low-speed corners this car doesn't like bumps, it's bad.
Word is out. Word is hit. It's spun.
Well,
And
one
Holgate's
is
pitting.
done as Holgate pits. We've got 2 things to talk about there. We'll get ourselves a replay up on your screen for Andreas Warner, and let's have a look to see what happened to him.
Corner.
This is down into Canada Corner, so we'll have a look first of all from on board with him. Andreas Warner, who was trying to close up to the rear of Tim Holgate, has spun his car and is out of the race. So let's have a look to see what happens to him. Coming down in towards Canada Corner in the 08 car. Coming down, just loops that back end. And we saw that actually last year. We alluded at the top of this broadcast to the incident between Dave Jinks and Randy Chenoweth. That's actually very similar to what Dave Jinks did last year into that corner, Josh.
Yeah, it looks like Andreas was trying to push his entry back a little later and make a really sharp turn in. And I don't know if he was downshifting or not, but the back end just snapped out. And it's one of those things where you actually need to back off earlier for that corner. A lot of these corners, you can't push it like you think in an open wheel car. This car drives a lot more like a GT with the way you drive it. So the more you back it up, the better off you're going to be speed and consistency. And we just saw from Andreas, pushing didn't exactly work.
Canada's quite a late apex corner, so you've really got to go back the entry down just to get it round to the apex. Otherwise, you're just going to go too wide and miss it.
Now, Tim Holgate has made his final stop. That is why he's classified in the 2nd position. But we know Andreas Warner has lost himself about 5 seconds. His last lap was a 1 minute 52, actually. So he basically exactly the same as if he was to do an in lap. He's back down into Canada now. Right along board of him as he kicks up a little bit of dust as he comes down into Bill Mitchell Bend. We expect him to be onto pit road in the next 2 laps maximum. Comes down into that final corner, turn number 14 on the racetrack. Does he arc his car to the right hand side? The answer to that is no. He will stay to lead another lap. So Andreas Warner in the Club DH car leads another lap here, but that gap between himself and Tim Holgate isn't much at all on the racetrack. And also, he's got to get past Randy Crosno, who is going to go down a lap to your race leader for the time being as they come down in towards turn number 2, riding along board then with Andreas Warner, Josh.
Yeah, I think I don't see the interval yet from Holgate because he hasn't crossed the line and cycled through, but he's not going to have anywhere near enough of a gap to make that. Yeah, 23 seconds. He really needs maybe like a 30 to 35 second gap. That 10-second loss is really going to kill him here because he might have been able to get around with a really good in-lap and out-lap, but now it's looking pretty bad for Andreas. He's still going to easily be in 2nd, but I think a win's out of the question now.
And this is a very good understanding of how difficult this racetrack is, Cam, as we spend a lap riding on board with Andreas Warner. He is leading the way, but of course, he will relinquish that one. Oh, car ahead of him, that's Randy Crosno, who just goes off right ahead of him. And that is the last thing you ever want to see as a driver. So we're going to get ourselves another look at that one. And this is Randy Crosno, who just loops it there, right ahead of your overall race leader. That is that moment when you get the heart in the mouth moment, Cam.
Yeah, I believe the sound effect for that is so when that happens, you gotta not let it get to you. But at the same time, how many times are these things going to happen to Andreas Warner? Somebody goes into the pits right before he does and gets on the brakes. He's had the rear end kick out on him twice. He just seems to be having quite a hard luck day.
Yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to the expression "you make your own luck."
And he is
coming
in the
in
pits.
Yep, so there we can see one more look then for Randy Krosno as he comes down into that corner. Just very slow spin for him. Thankfully, he wasn't too close to Andreas, so he wouldn't have lost too much time here. But Andreas Warner is now scored on pit road as we get a look at his pit stop time. The last time around, that is 9.1 seconds. A long 45 mile an hour pit road here for Andreas to navigate up towards. And Tim Holgate, by the way, is already gone. So yeah, that is the lead that Holgate will have after this. Part of that will be attributed to Rachel, of course, to the fact that Andreas Warner had that spin 6.6 seconds out and away for him. But Tim Holgate, barring any major incident, is looking as though he could be at the incident. And also, Andreas clipped that yellow line rather dramatically, actually. I want to get ourselves another look at that because, Rachel, we talk about crossing that line. He actually did cross that line there.
Yeah, he did. He might well have an unsafe pit exit, which could end up in a penalty for him, which would be really unfortunate.
There you can see the line, by the way.
Eric Davis, the third place car, was just came into bits behind Werner, so he should be pretty much secure for second if he does not have a penalty there.
Yeah, we've just got a super slow-mo there of Andreas as he did very clearly cross that line. And here, by the way, is Rob Unglings on pit road. He is out and away, 7 seconds. Bit of a slow getaway, but back out onto the racetrack will come Rob Unglings then in the Team No Bueno car as he now comes across in towards turn number 1. Just actually losing a position to Brian Kozlowski for the time being. Now, we've also got ourselves David Stockrider on pit road there for the P1 racing car as he is now going to make his journey back out onto the racetrack, Cam.
Yes, and we'll have to see where Randy Krosno comes into the picture. They probably would have been much closer as Randy Krosno is just coming into the picture as David Stockrider takes turn 1, but Randy did have that spin right in front of the leader at the time, Andreas Werner.
Yep, so there you can see David Stockrider. Confirmation then back out into 6th place for him. To give you an update though, here is your race leader, Tim Holgate. He comes past the start-finish line. This very well could be an easy victory for him. No need to worry on the last couple of laps. And there you can see the gap, Rachel. It's 13.3 seconds. Andreas Warner has tried hard here today. He's made some unforced errors. Holgate has just done what Holgate does best, and that is drive consistently, not push the car too hard, and get himself into position to win motor races.
Exactly, and that's the critical thing, you know. You just don't make mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, you go fast. You might not have to be as fast as one of the other drivers. As we've seen here, he hasn't been as fast as Andreas Werner or as Joshua Chin. He's just made less mistakes. Sorry, Josh, but he has just made less mistakes, and that doesn't make him better or worse than them. It's just a consistency that will win a race, and he hasn't put a foot wrong as we've said this, and I hope we don't give him the commentator's curse, but unless something horrendous happens and that curse comes true, Andreas Werner's going to have to settle for second, because 13 seconds over 5 laps ain't going to happen.
By the way, Dave Jinks just making his final pit stop of the day. 9.1 seconds for him with a broken aero car. Currently running himself in the 11th spot off the racetrack. High attrition rate here today, Cam. And that means that Dave Jinks, if one more driver messes up, he could... Actually, no, I take that back. He won't ever get himself into the top 10 now because he's a little bit too far back. He can actually pull that car off the racetrack now. Be guaranteed with 11th place. And he's just now turning laps in Nico Rosberg Esquire, knowing he can't get the job done, but knowing that he wants to finish this motor race.
Yes, and you know, we've said multiple times, Dave Jinks, his car very slow, but he just stuck with it, kept getting out of everybody's way. I don't believe he had caused any incidents. I don't believe he had struck at any other cars. So, you know what? Good for him. He's just cruised along, and he's now just on the precipice of a top 10 when we were saying he probably shouldn't be on the track. There were probably 6 or 7 other cars that he's now passed ahead of him.
Brian Karzeski running himself in 4th position. Rob Unglings in 5th. And this is one of our closest battles into the last 5 laps of today's race. The 8th round, the 2014 16th Street Racing League. We'll be back, of course, next week. Same time, same place, as we bring you coverage of the 9th round of the championship. That'll be 170 laps around the Magic Mile, New Hampshire Motor Speedway. It'll be here live on RaceSpotTV. And Josh, as far as ovals go, there is no tougher short oval than New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Even understanding what the banking is a difficult point. It is classified as 4/7 grade. And it's not like the parabolic banking you see at Homestead Miami Speedway. You actually get a step up from the inside lane into the second all the way up to the outside lane. It's a different degree of banking, but it's got a little step in it compared to a gradual rise.
Yeah, it's a really abrupt transition. The very bottom of New Hampshire used to be the apron. Now it's the first groove since they did a little update back in 2000. And it's a quirky little track to race Indy cars on, but it's actually a lot of fun. I know last year when we raced there, it was a really frustrating race for some of the things that happened to me. But overall, it was a really, really fun race to drive, and hopefully it's just as good as with this DW12 as it was last year.
Last time by the way, this driver, Brian Kozieski, does himself a 1 minute 42.5. Rob Unglings, however, a 1 minute 44.3. He is closing in, and if he's got any uses of the button left, Cam, he might just be in of a shot in the last couple of laps of this motor race.
Yes, this gap, obviously, I think they've been stabilized pretty much this entire race, but Rob Unglings is definitely going to have to double down and start taking the risks that perhaps maybe he didn't want to before, which could come with its own Pandora's box. But right now it just seems that Rob Unglings, with the blood in the water, might just be able to catch up to Brian Kozieski.
Meanwhile, Tim Holgate is still your leader. The gap between these two drivers is now down to under 1 second. So, with 4 laps to go, Kozieski and Unglings battling for 4th place on the racetrack. Nice little scrap to bring our cars home. By the way, Dave Jinks is scored back on pit road. There we can see him making another pit stop. This one is just a little bit longer than the previous one. And I believe that he's out of his car and out of this motor race now, Rachel.
Yeah, that would be really unfortunate for Dave Jinks, but he has gained positions he needs to get, which, you know, he can't really improve now. There's too few laps to go after some of the guys who haven't finished, but yeah, that's what you got to do. Sometimes you know you're not going to win the race on the track because you've got a damaged car. You can still make up positions on people who also don't finish.
Well, if you want to understand the definition of cruise control, that is what Tim Holgate is doing with 3 laps now to go. His last lap, 2 seconds a lap slower than Andreas Warner, who actually last time by did a 1 minute 42.889. Warner is absolutely flying right now, and Holgate is cruising. That's why that gap is now back down to less than 10 seconds on the racetrack. Riding on board then with Andreas Warner as he comes past the stripe. Another 1 minute 42.9 for him. Now, let's just think about this one very quickly, Cam. If this was for the race lead, Warner very easily could have been in a fighting chance. That spin, he's going to rue now.
Yes, and of course the other issues, the lap car spinning in front of him, the pit entry. But I'm almost wondering now, a 144.4, is Tim Holgate going to have enough fuel?
I presume so. I just think that he always likes to manage these races. He's not doing a Sebastian Vettel or a Will Power trying to get fastest lap, complete the trifecta, or Joshua Chin. He just wants to get himself to the end of the motor race. By the way, you can see the gap between Kozieski and Rob Unglings is now less than 1 second as they come past the start-finish line. Just about to dip below, you see, below 8 tenths of a second as we have a look from the rear then of Kozieski as they work themselves down into 1 once again. This is what you said earlier, Rachel. Get yourself into position where you get those push-to-passes for the end of the motor race.
Oh yeah, you know, you can use them strategically throughout the race just for a matter of time, but you got to save some for the end for when you might need it. Of course, you might not, so you can just blast them away, but they are a critically useful tool, and that will give you those valuable tenths and thousandths of a second that will help make a difference.
Now, that last time by 192 miles an hour down into turn number 5 for Rob Unglings. Having a look at his lap times, his last lap was about a second off of his fastest off the race. So that tyre wear is coming in. And actually that gap now, Cam, is back up to 1.1 seconds as these two guys continue to battle for P4.
Yes, and it's just going to be a matter of how many risks Rob Unglings is going to take and how many, just how pressured Brian Kozieski is going to become as they are coming up on the car of Terry Mathiasen in position 10, as Rob Unglings does pick up a little bit of dirt there as they come through the kink once again, coming down towards Canada corner.
Oh, David Stockrider's around, by the way. This is down on the exit of the hurry down. So David Stockrider with an issue that's going to drop him once again behind Randy Crosno. These two have been involved in their own fair share of issues here today. And let's have a look then to see David Stockrider This is him down into turn number 5, and actually loses it into turn 6, so I take that one back. Down in towards turn number 6. Our camera only caught the rear end of that. We're going to get ourselves another replay. You just saw at the very end of that shot, Randy Crosno going past, but this is down into 5, nicely through there, and down into that braking zone for turn number 6. Not the first time we've seen a driver have an incident down underneath that Corvette bridge, Rachel.
No, it isn't, and it's a very popular place because that's a very difficult
site. I'm sorry to interrupt. They go into Canada Corner, both of them 2x2, Randy Crosno and David Stockrider, and they both spun out entering Canada Corner.
And never touched.
Well, let's get ourselves a replay of that one then. So we'll go live, then we'll go back to replay. We'll do it
Whilst you're looking
live.
for that, guys, Andreas Werner has taken 7 seconds out of Tim Holgate in the last 4 laps, including the fastest lap of the race, a 32.9.
But we talked about that earlier on. It could just be Holgate managing. So this is down into. They can see Stockrider losing that car, and they can see Randy Crosno losing the car at the same point at the same time. I'm going to get ourselves another look at that one, actually, as they work themselves. We'll use our aerial coverage powered by An1 Design. As they come down into the corner, you'll see one and you'll see the other. Both lose it at exactly the same time as they come down into the corner. There you can see one, there you can see the other one. I'll give that one an 8.0 for effort there, Chin.
Yeah, just to clarify, Andreas does not have the fastest lap, by the way. Yeah, that's a really strange wreck. Yes, I think I had a 42.3. Yeah, that's a strange wreck, because I don't know if they were just trying to outbrake each other and they locked up the rears or what they did.
But we are onto the final lap of this race. Tim Holgate working himself down into the hurry down to the final time. Update on the battle for P4. Kozlowski has now got a 1.8 second advantage over Rob Ungerlings. Ungerlings not able to do enough. Kozlowski using that button on the last couple of laps. He actually does himself a 144.2 that last time by to 144.1 for Rob Ungerlings. So it looks as though that gap is going to stay as it is. We're right on board now with Tim Holgate as he comes down into the King for the final time. He's still got himself a 6.2 second advantage. He has managed that gap over the last 5-6 laps ever since that final pit stop. Down he comes into Canada Corner for the final time. There's one car ahead of him. That's not necessarily going to be an issue for him at all as he comes through Bill Mitchell Bend for the final time in towards corner number 14 to complete this 40-lap event. Up the hill then comes Tim Holgate. He will claim victory in this, the 8th round, the 2014 16th Street Racing League. Tim Holgate, a winner once again, and after the issues at Richmond 1 week ago, he goes back to victory lane. Andreas Warner now just coming himself up the hill to take 2nd place, and then it's a very long wait, Rachel, to Eric Davis to round out your podium.
Yes, it will be well, and, well, I could say well fought 3rd place, but it's not. Davis just hanging on, really. Good pace, not quite as high as some of the guys, but he's definitely had a good one, holding in there without any problems.
So now here comes Eric Davis into Bill Mitchell Bend for the final time. Just one more corner to go for him as the driver for Banshee Autosport will claim 3rd place here today. Interesting point to note, we are again going to have 5 different teams represented in the top 5 as Davis comes past the start-finish line. There you can see Brian Kozlowski coming home in the 4th place across the start-finish line for him now to claim that 4th position. Rob Ungerlings coming past the start-finish line himself now to round out your top 5. 5 different teams, 5 different places in the top 5, Cam. Very interesting point.
Yes, and this was just a battle of attrition, really. Who could keep the cars on the track as Tim Holgate now backing up past Canada. He's doing a reverse lap, I guess. Everyone has done a very good job between both Banshee, Tim Holgate, and all the rest of the teams here. As I seriously think Tim Holgate is trying to drive a lap backwards in Road America.
He's doing a good job
Polish
so
road
far.
lap.
Yeah,
It's reverse Polish
Reversing.
You've got the Polish victory lap on an oval. You've got a Polish victory lap now going on
That's
the
not
road
Polish,
course.
that's Czechoslovakian.
For
He's driving the whole thing backwards.
Tim Holgate, as he works himself out the hurry downs, he's going to try and get himself all the way through this lap. I tell you what, the kink's going to be interesting for him now, Chin.
Yeah, I don't... You know, I have a hard enough time going around here forwards, apparently, and he's just going backwards now. I feel like this is taunting. Can we get a penalty here? I feel like that's taunting.
Well, he works himself
Excessive
out the
celebration.
carousel. And there's the thing as well. He's still going 120 miles an hour. We'll get the speed up. Look at this.
He's going
actually
70.
Yeah,
70,
70 miles an hour.
74
I'll take
miles an
that back. And now you see he comes himself through the kink. Does he work himself out of the kink? Yes,
very
he
nice.
does. So now just 2 corners to go for Tim Holgate on the reverse lap, working himself through the little kinks and bends here. Tim Holgate is doing actually one of the
corners, well.
funniest things I have seen so far in this series as he works himself now down into Canada corner cam. This is entertaining to watch.
Does this count as the Jacques Villeneuve line?
I don't know. But it is very entertaining to see as he still has oncoming traffic. Terry Mathiasen wondering what is going on here as he will slow up. Just a few more corners to go as Tim
At least you can
Holgate
see the
will...
traffic coming.
You definitely most certainly can see the traffic coming. But yes, a good victory for Tim Holgate here at Road America. Obviously, I don't think he had the ultimate pace for the day, but some days you don't need ultimate pace, you need consistency, and if you're looking for consistency, Mr. Holgate is the man you were looking for, as he's going to take it into the pits backwards.
Well, Tim Holgate, I think, has just made the moment of the race. If this was college football, then Geico
would be a
be
duck.
applauding you right now. That Affleck does the trivia questions. Thank you
No,
very
I'm
much.
talking
Apparently,
about
the
duck
pit
in
limiter works in reverse too. I did not know this.
There you
It
can
does,
see
I've tried that one.
Tim Holgate taking victory here today. And now he does a donut. So he does things, points it back in the right direction and heads himself back down towards his pit stall. Ladies and gentlemen, to run through your final race results from this, the 8th round, the 2014 16th Street Racing League. Here on RaceSpotTV, it is Tim Holgate claiming victory by Andres Warner by 5.5 seconds. Eric Davis in the 3rd place. 4th place goes to Brian Kozeski. 5th place to Rob Ungerings. 6th place to David Stockrider. 7th is Randy Crosno. 8th place Joe Branch. 9th Steve Richardson. And then 10th place is Terry Mattinson. Over into page number 2. They Jinx, Tim Muller, Nell McBride, and Hunter Smith. Joshua Chin in 15th, Mark Johnson 16th, Chuck Eisenbarth in 17th, Matt Kingsbury 18th, Austin SPT 19th, and then Mitchell DeYoung rounds out your 20-car field here today. And we're going to get ourselves right into post-race interviews. We'll start with the driver who came home in the 2nd position. Andreas Warner, you tried very hard here today, however, wasn't able to get yourself onto the top step of the podium. In what was a rather difficult race for you, one little off and an incident coming onto pit road, being stuck behind a slower car, really was your undoing here today.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the incident at the pit entrance was the reason, but main reason, of course, was I spun in lap 31. I think I was a little bit distracted by a yellow flag that came out because of a slow car. For some reason I forgot to brake and shift down like I always do, and I don't know, I spun, and I think that cost me about 10 seconds, and I think, yeah, that was it for the race, unfortunately.
Well, you did get 2nd place. You had some storming laps along the way. How hard were you pushing before you made that spin?
Oh, I was pushing 99%, I think. I mean, of course, I couldn't push too hard because, I mean, a 2nd place is also good. But as soon as I realized that Chin was out, because I think it took me a few laps to notice that I was actually racing for the win and not only for 2nd. And yeah, so I was a little bit surprised that Tim made his pit stop a little bit earlier than me. So that meant that at the end I was going to have a much shorter pit stop, so I could still have a chance at the end catching him. And I also had all my push to passes left. I totally forgot in the beginning to use them, to be honest. And well, without this spin, I'm sure it could have become a very, very tight battle. But I mean, I was chasing Tim almost the whole race, and we did equal lap times, and he just didn't make a mistake. It was very frustrating.
Now, it's a couple of weeks before we get to our next road course. Of course, we've got New Hampshire Money Speedway in 1 week's time. Showing there, what do you think you're going to get?
In New Hampshire?
Yes.
I'm actually just doing the road courses.
Okay, so what
Or
you're
are we
actually
doing an infield? Is there something I don't know?
It's not an infield, it's an outfield track, don't forget, at the Magic Mile. But of course, the next time we go to a road course is going to be in 2 weeks' time. I know you're going to ask me why we're running, so I'm going to have to figure this one out very quickly in my
I
head.
think Indy Road.
Yes, it is going to be Indy Road, actually, in 2 weeks' time. Looking forward to Indy Road?
I have never done a race so far.
Don't worry,
on
there's plenty of
iRacing on this
cones.
track. The last time I did a race, I think that was Formula 1 2000 from EA Sports.
EA Sport. It's in the game.
I'll give you a pro
It's
tip,
more money.
Andreas. Don't put downforce in your car so you're fast in the infield section and do the same lap times as everybody else until you get onto the actual oval part in the race and feel like you're tied to a post.
Even though I did that last year and won.
Well, I did that
Okay.
and I sucked, so...
Well, but again, Andres, well done. Second place here today. Anyone who'd like to say thank you to before we let you go?
I don't know. Maybe the inventors of iRacing. Maybe I should thank you for commentating. Or I don't know. Were you commentating? Or
I
who
was.
was?
I was actually
Oh, really?
commentating.
He wasn't asleep.
Oh, well. So he. Yeah.
He got out of bed just for you.
Actually, I didn't even
did.
go to bed. But yes, we'd like to give a very big shout out to Dave Kramer and all the guys over at iRacing.com, courtesy of Andreas Warner, and also shout out to And One Designs as well. Official partner of our aerial coverage here on RaceSpotTV. We've got ourselves Tim Holgate as well. Welcome back to Victory Lane, and I'm sure that must make up for the incident that happened at, Richmond just a week or so ago. Take us through your race very quickly, Tim.
Hey, Will. Good to see you guys. Definitely good to be back in victory lane here. The race was actually a little bit more eventful to start than I was hoping for. My plan, looking at the pace of a lot of the guys, was just to try for a podium finish. Since for the overall championship, I wasn't racing any of these guys, but things turned out pretty well early on. Michel made I think he locked his rears and spun out. I managed to avoid that. That got me up to second securely. And then chasing Josh, at that point after Michel spun, there was no chance of me catching up to Josh on pure pace. I mean, not without taking significant risks. So I decided just to run conservative for the remainder. And then I saw he made a mistake. And I thought, okay, well, let's push now. And then I saw that he was still faster. And then I kind of just, decided, let's run a pace we know we can run and run our race. And, everything worked out. At the end, we were making really good fuel mileage. I actually changed the strategy a little bit, took less fuel near the end. So rather than running a bunch of 10-lap stints, we were able to trim it down to 8 at the end. But yeah, the car was really good. It was nice and stable, so I felt pretty confident running it. Didn't worry too much about letting people close the gap because I was pretty sure we weren't going to spin. But yeah, I want to make sure to congratulate Lewis Hamilton on his second Formula One drivers championship.
I still
It
haven't
was,
seen this yet, thanks.
Oh,
But you've
sorry.
seen it on Twitter, so we won't tell you anything in
The
detail.
race was 12 hours ago.
I've
This
been in
is
6
true.
hours of Sebring.
Yeah, we did the 6 hours of Sebring.
Well, that only adds up to 6 hours free.
Well,
So-
actually, we'll run through what happened in the F1 race. Cato, of course, won. Then we had
The Constructors
ourselves...
Championship.
Spoilers, by the way.
and then, spoilers. Then, of course, we had the two Saubers rounding up the podium, finally getting themselves some points.
Very
And
impressive.
Maldonado and I just managed to run into everyone. But yes, you can carry on.
He got his pilot's
Congratulations.
license this
now.
race, didn't he?
Yeah, you can now congratulate Lewis Hamilton again, Tim.
Well, since I'm already spoiling everything, I want to congratulate Kevin Harvick as well. So,
Seen that one already, don't worry.
Spoiler alert!
Who is Kevin Harvick?
I think he drives IndyCar.
Yes.
Oh. Yeah, baseball player.
Pirelli World Challenge, I think.
Yeah. I think some guy called Sebastian Loeb won the NASCAR championship.
Bastian Loeb.
We'd also like to congratulate the Seattle Seahawks, Tim, on winning their Super Bowl. I mean, that only happened a couple of hours ago, but congratulations to them.
Yes.
I did hear that
was a
the
great
Ken
game
Block
over
entered
the
race
Colts.
and didn't spin.
Yes. But Tim, to get onto more familiar territory here, we have got ourselves New Hampshire Motor Speedway, the Magic Mile, in 1 week's time. It's a track that you're pretty good at. It's also a track which, like the last time we won an oval at Richmond, is likely to be a strategy race, when the cautions fly, when you get tyres, and whether anyone else will come with you onto pit road?
Well, I really didn't care if anybody came with me or not. I would have made the same decision either way, because having tires puts you in the driver's seat versus putting you in the defensive seat. And that's the way I like to race. That's the way I wanted to push. If the yellow hadn't come out, I was pretty confident we were going to go right back to the front. The car was that good. Our shoulder oval car is excellent. I'm sure we'll have a great car there as well. So don't have a whole lot of time to practice this week. I'll be out, so hopefully some of the other guys will catch up. We'll be able to make for some more interesting racing with people closer in. But I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Before we let you go, is there anyone who you'd like to say thank you to at all?
Oh, I'd like to thank Bernie Ecclestone for making such a great season. You know, it was fantastic watching one team run away with everything and having the only thing be the two teammates racing each other. You know, that was fantastic. So thanks to him. Thanks to the guys for running the 16th Street League. Thanks to my teammates. Thanks to you guys for the broadcast. Good to see Josh in a race. I was just thinking to myself earlier today that it'd been kind of a little bit dull the last couple races, so having him in here was good. Hopefully we can have some closer racing on the road courses going forward.
You didn't say thank you to Jean Todt, of course, the president of the FIA. You just going to exclude him?
Well, I could thank all those guys, but you know, I've decided I'll blame Bernie, just like I blamed Al Davis for the Raiders.
When in doubt, just blame Bernie. Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Holgate claiming victory here today in the 8th round of the 16th Street Racing League. Just having a look at him actually come down to complete his win. And Rachel, our big performer of this race is Tim Holgate, not necessarily for the win, but for then what happened afterwards.
Oh yeah, I mean, like we said, it could have been a Polish victory lap, but like I said, more like a Czechoslovakian victory lap, because that was quite an interesting finish.
And driver of the race for you, Rachel?
I've got to say Andreas Werner, because he tried so damn hard, and in the end he was closing that gap massively. He pulled out some incredibly fast laps. He had some problems, but the fact he came back from those problems to finish where he did, I think was the biggest thing.
Cam?
Do I get any additional points for that? Or?
No.
Oh.
Any additional points for what?
Trying
Okay,
hard.
you guys confused me. For God's
Brain
sakes.
wreck.
Alright, I have to go to work, so yeah, I will see you guys later, I suppose. Oh, signature
driver of
move.
the race?
Signature move.
No driver of the race?
No drives. Tim Holgate for going backwards. That was very impressive. I like that.
Well, there we are then, ladies and gentlemen. Tim Holgate, we're just taking a look from him as he starts his Polish victory lap. For myself, again, the Polish victory lap, I do think completely wins this one. Andreas Werner, a great run by him, despite the fact that he had that spin. Well done to all the finishers as well. And of course, next week we head over to the Magic Mile, New Hampshire Motor Speedway for continuing coverage here of the 16th Street Racing League. However, as always, Monday nights are Skippy nights here on RaceSpotTV as we bring you continuing coverage of the 2014 Club UK and Ireland Skip Barber Racing School Championship. Coverage starts at 8:40 PM GMT, live exclusively only here on RaceSpotTV. So this has been a RaceSpotTV presentation of the 2014 16th Street Racing League round number 8 from Road America. That's the one. Myself, Will Vincent, Rachel Whiteford, Cam Walsh. Thank you very much for watching, and happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you all next Sunday. Bye-bye.